The sound of a lawnmower and edger, both buzzing away simultaneously, rudely shattered my Saturday morning sleep-in. A groan from the other side of the bed suggested I wasn't the only one being disturbed. Charlotte sat up, stretching and yawning in one motion. "Sorry, Michael, I totally forgot. The boys wanted to get an early start on the yard work so everything would be ready for this afternoon." With that, she headed to the bathroom, tossing her dirty blonde hair to untangle the knots from sleeping on it. Her figure looked as good as it had 20 years ago. Today was my birthday, which meant it was time for the traditional barbecue with family, friends, and neighbors. It was always a bit extravagant for a birthday party, requiring us to borrow extra grills and smokers to handle everything. Despite it being my special day, I often found myself doing most of the cooking. I wasn't particularly skilled at it, but it got the job done. The best part was always having a cold beer in my left hand as I worked the meat with my right. Equals equals equals. Do you want your birthday present now, or will you wait until tonight? Charlotte asked me affectionately. Let's get all the presents tonight, dear. Now I'm going to go downstairs and help the boys. Thomas, 18 and gearing up for Texas A&M in 2 months, and Tyler, a year younger with a scholarship lined up for Auburn, were proving themselves as good sons. I credited Charlotte for raising them right. The only direct contributions I made were a comfortable house and instilling a solid work ethic. Regret lingered for not being a more involved father. We spent a couple of hours sprucing up the yard and patio before firing up the grills. I made sure the ribs went on the smokers first. Hamburgers, hot dogs, and steaks could wait, but ribs needed their own attention. Thomas got the smokers going while Tyler handled the dry rub. At this rate, I could almost sit back and let them handle everything this year. Charlotte arrived just as we wrapped up the prep work. Her 2 sisters were coming over to assist with the extras. We had over 50 people to feed today, and it was amusing how friends tended to show up when there was free food involved. At 40 years old, I still felt as youthful as ever, and next month, Charlotte and I would mark our 20th wedding anniversary. Our marriage had been solid. Though our closeness had mellowed over the years, it remained just as precious. However, things had shifted about a year ago, coinciding with Charlotte starting work. The prospect of an empty nest had nudged her out of the house. As long as she was happy, I was content. While we weren't in need of the extra income, she craved social interaction. After the boys and I finished showering, I put on a new shirt my mother had dropped off earlier in the week. It wasn't really my style, more like something a Hawaiian pimp would wear. Charlotte wisely suggested I wear an apron, and of course, I had a good one that read, "Don't kiss the cook." Soon our guests began to arrive, bringing dishes, presents, and drinks. The weather was perfect, promising a beautiful day ahead. Charlotte appeared stunning, as always, and effortlessly assumed her role as the perfect hostess. Despite approaching 40, she could easily pass for 30, maintaining both her figure and her youthful appearance. I eagerly anticipated some exotic weekends and vacations once the boys were grown and gone. As Charlotte gracefully moved among the tables, ensuring everything was in order, I couldn't help but admire her. She epitomized the ideal wife and mother. What more could a man ask for? Finally, the hungry crowd descended, and plates of food swiftly appeared and disappeared across the yard. Most guests had brought their own lawn furniture, simplifying things. Beer was chilling in one wash tub, sodas in another. I knew the cake was safely waiting in the kitchen, biding its time for its moment in the spotlight. I had no idea where he came from, and I certainly didn't recognize him. He stood tall in a dark blue jacket, lingering at the edge of the party area before leaning in to speak with one of our neighbors. She pointed towards Charlotte, and he thanked her before making his way towards us. Charlotte noticed his approach, looking somewhat uneasy. I remained silent as he passed by me. "Charlotte Harrison?" he inquired. My wife nodded. "Yes." He handed her an envelope pulled from inside his jacket. "Charlotte Harrison, you are served." With that, he turned and left as quietly as he had arrived. By this point, everyone at the party was watching. Charlotte stood there, unmoving, her face betraying no emotion. She glanced at me before slowly retreating back into the house. I watched in silence as the guests, once chattering, now murmured and whispered in hushed tones. In an attempt to break the tension, I called out, "Does anybody want more ribs? Come and get them." Thomas and Tyler came over to my side. "What's going on, Dad?" Tyler asked discreetly. All I could do was shrug. Thomas made a move to go inside, but I stopped him with a shake of my head. "Why don't you guys check if we need more beer or drinks?" As conversation in the yard began to normalize, I felt some relief. After 10 minutes, I decided it was time to talk to my wife, but I didn't get the chance. "Dad, Mom's taking the Mustang," Tyler said, nodding towards the front of the house. My black Mustang convertible sped down the street faster than usual. The backyard fell silent as everyone watched her drive away. Charlotte typically drove the minivan, but it was blocked in. The Mustang was convenient. There were many unanswered questions, but I figured they would have to wait until my wife returned home. Things took a turn for the worse after that. Charlotte's sister, Amelia, brought out the cake, and I made a half-hearted attempt to appear happy. Without Charlotte, there seemed to be a shadow over everything. Friends and neighbors left first. Family lingered a bit longer, but eventually there was nothing left to tidy up or wash. Surprisingly, Charlotte's sudden departure was not discussed. Everyone made a conscious effort to avoid the topic. I was left alone with my 2 sons, and the house was quiet. They both looked to me for some kind of explanation or sign. I had none to offer. I sat on the sofa alone as they went to bed, and I was still there in the morning. Thomas and Tyler were up early, returning the grills and other items borrowed from neighbors. The scent of fresh coffee drew me off the couch. Charlotte had it returned. Whatever was in that envelope must have been pretty important. I tried calling her cell phone several times, but it was turned off. Of course, I spent half the night awake trying to figure out what was going on. The boys wrapped up tidying everything away and left, easily sensing my need for solitude. A lengthy, steamy shower offered some relief, though it was fleeting. There wasn't much I could occupy myself with on a Sunday. Tomorrow, I'd reach out to see if the police could be of any assistance. I didn't have any direct connections to cops or detectives, but I did have a few acquaintances in the courthouse. Perhaps they could offer some aid. We managed our finances with 1 credit card and 1 debit card. The debit card handled day-to-day expenses, while the credit card was reserved for larger purchases, both always paid off promptly. If Charlotte were in trouble, those cards would be her lifeline. Credit card transactions usually took a couple of days to show up in the bank account, but debit charges appeared within hours. I decided to check the credit card activity first, but found nothing. The debit card, however, told a different story. Approximately 2 hours after Charlotte left, she purchased gas at the Pennsylvania and Ohio state line. 2 hours later, she made another purchase in Illinois, and the last transaction was an ATM withdrawal in Cedar Rapids for $300. It dawned on me, amidst my 3rd cup of coffee, that she wasn't planning to return. This wasn't just a spontaneous getaway, she was fleeing. I loved my wife and didn't want to harm her, but I also couldn't condone her actions. Even though it was Sunday, I managed to cancel both cards within 10 minutes. An hour later, I reported my Mustang stolen to the police department. I omitted the fact that my wife had taken it. Instead, I mentioned a gas card left in the car, which had been used in 3 states heading west. I felt uneasy about deceiving the police, but it seemed the only way to garner any attention. They weren't particularly interested in probing the situation, more eager to dismiss me. I quickly checked the house and noticed only her purse and a small overnight bag were missing. What she packed in it remained a mystery to me. For hours, I debated what to do with her cell phone. Canceling the cards, I hoped it would prompt her to call home and explain. Lunch was forgotten in the midst of my thoughts. By dinner time, my sons arrived with pizzas. Although there was plenty of food from the day before, the hot slices were a welcome treat. We finally discussed what had happened. I briefed them on what I knew, and they offered their support. That night, I slept in my bed, but Charlotte never called. Thomas and Tyler were working for a local tree trimming company over the summer. It was tough work, but they embraced the macho image it brought. I waved to them from the porch as their Jeep disappeared down the street. After finishing my coffee, I wandered back into the empty house, still trying to figure out what went wrong. I called work and took a week's vacation. While I was getting a bit tired of the job, it paid well. I delivered gravel for a local rock quarry. It was hot and dirty, but didn't require much decision-making. I just picked up the loads, dropped them off, and collected my paycheck. After Charlotte joined Prescott Casualty Company, we attended several company events together. They hosted parties and picnics, allowing me to meet some of her colleagues. However, over the last 6 months, we stopped going to these gatherings, and Charlotte never mentioned them. They used to be important to her, but suddenly they weren't. While I'm not great at remembering people I meet, I do recall Noor and Layla Diaz. Noor was a carpenter, and Layla worked in the same office as Charlotte. I felt it was time to call Prescott Casualty. Layla, it's Michael Connor. Do you have a moment to talk? Hi, Michael. I'm quite busy right now. Is it urgent? Charlotte didn't come to work today, did she? No, we weren't expecting her to. Oh, really? Why's that? There was a lengthy silence on the other end. It was clear Layla was uncomfortable talking to me. Michael, I don't think I should discuss this with you. You should talk to your wife. I'd love to, but I have no idea where she is. Another pause. Michael, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of work. I have to go. With that, she hung up. Suddenly, I had a sinking feeling that something was happening at Prescott Casualty that Charlotte didn't want me to know about. It explained why we stopped attending company functions. She feared someone might inadvertently reveal something or lead me to suspect she was up to something. I grabbed a chilled beer and stepped out onto the porch, seeking some solitude for reflection. Over the past few months, there were a few things I'd noticed about Charlotte, but I hadn't dwelled on them much. She started working overtime a few nights each week. It wasn't alarming, but it had become a regular occurrence. Charlotte became tight-lipped about her work at home, and we began avoiding socializing with her colleagues. However, her appearance and attire remained unchanged. She hadn't bought new clothes or lingerie, and there were no suspicious calls or emails that I could recall. I trusted my wife completely, so I didn't give these things much thought. She wasn't acting differently at home, nor was there a lack of romance between us. Still, it was time to make a few calls. Damian Foster, an old high school buddy who worked at the courthouse, was my first call. I wasn't sure about his job, but I knew it involved computers. I explained the situation to him and arranged to meet at the glass door after his work. Before leaving home, I also called Ronwell Home Builders and learned that Noor Diaz was working nearby on an apartment complex. I planned to see him after lunch. Usually, I could finish a Taco Bell burrito, but today I only managed half of it. I was eager to talk to Noor. When I arrived, the crew was still on their lunch break. Noor greeted me with a smile, much friendlier than Layla had been. Michael, good to see you. I suppose you're here to discuss Charlotte. Noor, I spoke with Layla this morning, and she refused to give me any details. You need to tell me straight, no nonsense. I respected Noor because he was a blue-collar guy like me, but I knew I'd get angry if he tried to deceive me. Michael, I usually ignore Layla when she starts gossiping about work, but I do know this much. Charlotte has been involved with a married man in the office for almost 6 months now. They tried to keep it quiet, but it spread quickly. Layla stopped talking to Charlotte when she found out, and so did many others. We missed you at company events, but we assumed Charlotte was keeping you away on purpose. That's the gist of it. I'm sorry I can't offer more. Do you know who the guy is? No, I don't pay attention like I should. I can find out for you. Don't worry about it, Noor. I'll handle it. That summed up the situation for me. There was no misunderstanding. Just a clueless husband who didn't know what was happening in his own home. 10 minutes later, I canceled Charlotte's cell phone service. Now, she couldn't call home. As I headed back home, my phone rang. The police in Cedar Rapids had found the Mustang parked in the bus station depot parking lot. It had been towed to an impound lot, and I could retrieve it after paying a $300 fee. I stopped by the police station and got a hard copy of the report. The only conclusion was that Charlotte had abandoned the car and switched to the bus. I couldn't find out where she went, but I assumed it was westerly. I didn't even know she knew anyone in that area. I swung by the bank, closed all our joint accounts, and opened new ones solely in my name. Then I updated the beneficiary on my insurance policies to the boys. By the time Damien showed up at the glass door, I'd had one too many drinks. Michael, there was a divorce hearing today, and Charlotte was summoned to testify. She didn't show naturally. Hannah Smith was divorcing her husband, Steve, citing adultery. Mrs. Smith wanted Charlotte to confirm if she was the woman her husband cheated with. So, without Charlotte's testimony, the divorce didn't go through. Nope went exactly as planned. Mrs. Smith had enough evidence, photos, videos, recorded calls, to make her case without Charlotte. I think she just wanted to humiliate her. Seems like she succeeded. What's Charlotte's situation now? Doesn't seem like anyone cares anymore. There's nothing new she could add, and it's all irrelevant now. Steve basically confessed after seeing the evidence, and the judge granted the divorce on the spot. It'll be final in 6 months. He's getting hit hard with child support and alimony. He has kids. Yeah, 3, all under 10. He's in for a long ride with that. Damien and I chatted for a while, until he excused himself to head home to his family. I expressed my gratitude for his help and requested some coffee from the barkeep. I almost reached for one of the red pickled eggs in the jar on the counter, but then I remembered the leftovers from the party. I indulged a bit more than I should have, but still managed to make it home without causing any accidents. It was a foolish move given the circumstances. While I took a shower, I wrapped 6 ribs in tin foil and put them in the oven. When I returned to the kitchen, all that remained were bones. Thomas and Tyler arrived home and made a beeline for the pork. They teased me a bit and then cooked another batch. Thomas was thrilled about the Mustang situation. After a 20-minute discussion, I relented and allowed both boys to take a bus to Cedar Rapids and drive the car home. I gave them $600 to cover expenses. Tyler drafted a note on the computer, granting them permission to pick up and drive the car home. He seemed competent, so I kept quiet and signed it. The next morning, we all had breakfast at IOPUB, and I dropped them off at the bus station. I chuckled a bit as they boarded, knowing they had no idea what 2 days on a Greyhound would be like. It was a valuable life lesson. I called the Cedar Rapids Police Department to let them know to expect Thomas and Tyler. They assured me there would be no issues. There was one more thing I needed to take care of. It didn't take long for Layla to point out where Steve Smith's office was. As soon as she spotted me, she reached for her phone, but it was too late. I didn't bother with introductions. I just started laying into him, pounding on him about the head and shoulders. He weakly tried to defend himself, but ended up on the floor behind his desk. I delivered a few kicks to his groin before security guards pulled me away. He was knocked out, and I felt a surge of relief. Things escalated quickly after that. Before I knew it, I was at the police station, facing a judge and being escorted to county jail. There was no trial, just a quick judgment. I got 60 days, and I couldn't care less. As soon as I could, I called the guys to fill them in. I could swear I heard Tyler laughing on the other end. The house would be fine sitting empty for a while. Reality wasn't quite like the TV dramas. It wasn't a breeze, but I didn't feel like my life was in danger or that I'd be attacked at any moment. Mostly, it was a bunch of unpleasant characters who couldn't get along and some rowdy kids. The kids and the troublemakers didn't mix much. Private rooms were out of the question. I ended up sharing a cell with a 300-pound guy named Jocko, who beat up his wife when he caught her with his brother. I didn't ask what happened to the brother. Jocko and I got along fine. Naturally, I took the top bunk. The food in the dining hall was too heavy on carbs for my taste, but Jocko was more than happy to take what I didn't want. Besides his propensity for farting more than any other man in the state, he was a good cellmate. 3 days later, Tyler and Thomas came to visit me. The car recovery went smoothly, but they dreaded taking any bus trips soon. They had no news about Steve or their mother. They brought me 2 cartons of cigarettes, even though I don't smoke. Thomas believed they'd be useful for trading, influenced by too many movies. Jocko, however, was thrilled to receive them. He claimed he needed to smoke to keep his weight down. Leaving the boys alone in the house wasn't a concern for me or apparently anyone else. Thomas had already left for school the week before I got out of jail, taking the minivan and leaving the Jeep for Tyler. Tyler and I celebrated my return by going to Red Lobster. He was eager to start his last year of high school, even though he'd have to do it without me. I had other plans. The next morning, Layla couldn't believe her eyes when I walked past her desk. I winked at her and went straight into Steve's office again. 3 hours later, I was back on the bus to the county jail, this time for 6 months. Tyler found it amusing and immediately called his brother at College Station. Jocko welcomed me back with open arms. Phew. I did a better job on Steve this time. I think I actually broke something. Of course, there was no feedback, so I can't be sure. I got fired from my job, which was no surprise. Fortunately, there was enough money stashed away to cover the house payments and living expenses. Tyler handled everything without any issues. All my family members, including Tyler, regularly visited me during my time in jail. Tyler made sure I had cigarettes for Jocko, who often dropped by too. Charlotte's sisters also came to offer their sympathy. Despite all this, no one had heard from Charlotte. We even had a family Thanksgiving and Christmas celebration in jail. With a month left before my release, Jocko left unexpectedly. His wife and brother had moved to Florida, leaving him unsure of his next steps. Tyler offered him a place to stay until he got settled, even offering him a job at the tree trimming company. But Jocko decided to move south for warmer weather, perhaps to Florida. The night before Jocko left, Steve Smith claimed he was attacked by an ape in a downtown alley. I found it amusing, given I had a solid alibi. After my release, I decided I had enough of Kelsey. He had moved away, and I didn't feel like searching for him. Instead, I took a course to learn how to drive big rigs, which wasn't much different from the dump trucks I was used to. I had to bide my time until Tyler started at Auburn, so I spent it fixing up the house. Although I wanted to sell it, it was in both our names, and I didn't want the hassle. No one had heard anything from Charlotte since she left. Tyler brought the Mustang along to Alabama, claiming it was a real crowd pleaser. Didn't do much for me, but then again, I didn't have his youth and charm. I managed to find a couple interested in buying the house, despite its dubious reputation. Not entirely sure what they meant by a cloud over it, but they scored a good deal, and their lawyer assured them they didn't need Charlotte's signature. I didn't argue, I just wanted to be done with it. With the down payment, I bought a rig with a sleeper and hit the road finally free. Never saw the need to file for divorce from Charlotte. Marriage wasn't something I was keen on doing again. Interesting women weren't exactly abundant in jail, and Jocko put me off the whole idea. Seems Charlotte felt the same way since no surprise paperwork arrived in the mail. Work came easily. I wasn't desperate for cash, so I could afford to be selective about my loads. Nothing frozen, alive, toxic, or explosive, and definitely no trips north of the Mason-Dixon line in winter. It didn't take long to get the hang of things, and I was actually enjoying my new life. Things got interesting during a delivery of farm equipment in South Dakota. It was June, so weather wasn't an issue. After dropping off the load, I headed south and stopped at the Belly Up Diner, about 5 miles off I-90. It might have been a hole in the wall, but the parking lot was packed with big rigs and cars. The draw? Breakfast, served all day, and it was spectacular in both size and flavor. Most customers were locals, but it seemed a few long-haul drivers had made a special detour to eat there. I just told the waitress to bring me the house favorite and a coffee. 3 large TV screens displayed different programs, each unnoticed by the patrons. The closest screen aired mostly political ads, one of which grabbed my attention. Oliver Grant was vying for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. He possessed charisma and charm, with his new wife, Charlotte, by his side, dressed impeccably like Jackie Kennedy. Charlotte was my ex, and seeing her with Grant stirred mixed emotions. My thoughts were interrupted as a massive plate of hash was placed in front of me. "There you go, big guy. Need anything else?" Betsy, my server, asked. "Tabasco," I replied. Betsy chuckled as she moved the hot sauce from its hidden spot behind the pepper shaker to my plate. "Are you all set now?" "Almost. Who's the woman next to that smooth talker?" She snorted. That's Grant's new arm candy. He needed a wife for his campaign. There were rumors about his sexuality, you know. I doused my hash with Tabasco. She seems a bit mature to be arm candy. Well, I guess when you're in a hurry, you can't be too picky, but she does look good. Older women make better lovers, don't you think? She did look good. Her once blonde hair was now auburn and expertly styled, her makeup flawless, and her tailored suit fitting her like a glove. I glanced away from the television and noticed my waitress had resumed her duties. The hash was delicious, explaining the full parking lot. My coffee was refilled twice before I finished my meal. The pie looked tempting, but I was too full to indulge. Betsy cleared my empty plate and placed the check in front of me. Is he going to win the election? Not if we can help it. He's got big money backing him from important people in Sioux Falls. Locals want nothing to do with him, but we lack the votes and funds to stop him, she replied. I chuckled as I pulled out my money clip. You seem to know something. Are you sure they got married? Yep, they did it on TV like it was a reality show. No honeymoon, though. They're waiting until after he's in office, I said, still smiling as I dropped a 10 on the counter. Before you leave, you better tell me something, Betsy said sternly. I'm not looking for trouble, and I'm not poking my nose where it doesn't belong. But I would appreciate a favor, I replied. What's that? Can I catch a couple hours of sleep out front before I hit the interstate? Sure, no problem, but be cautious of those coke addicts. They sneak up here every now and then. They're dirty, nasty people. I nodded my thanks and still had a smile on my face as I exited. Betsy watched from the window as I climbed into the rig. I was just starting to enjoy some well-deserved sleep when the banging began on the door. I ignored it for a moment, but it persisted. Go away. They said I could park here for a couple of hours. The banging continued, so I reluctantly opened the door. Betsy said I needed to talk to you. Can you spare a few minutes? It was dark and rainy, and all I could see was a tough-looking woman in a poncho. I didn't break any laws. Leave me alone. Just give me 10 minutes, she insisted, determined. Sorry, I'm not interested. Go talk to one of the other guys. I'm not a prostitute, damn it. I need to talk to you about Grant. I'll meet you inside in 10 minutes. That seemed to calm her down. She half smiled and closed the door. Maybe I should have just let her in, even though she was soaked. I checked my watch as I grabbed my rain gear. I'd only gotten 3 hours of sleep. The restaurant was still bustling with a decent crowd, and near the entrance there was a section for rain gear, soon to be swapped for snow gear and boots as the seasons changed. Seated in a booth by the front window, she had 2 cups of coffee in front of her. Her hair was straight and shiny black, with a small white streak on one side. Her complexion suggested an outdoorsy lifestyle, well-tanned and rugged, far from delicate. She was no girl. She looked to be at least 35, perhaps pushing 40, with high cheekbones and no makeup. As I sat down, I extended my hand. Michael Harrison. Mia Richardson, do you want anything to eat? No thanks, I just had the hash special about 3 hours ago. I don't think I'll be eating for a while. She replied with a polite smile. Betsy mentioned that you might have some information about Charlotte Grant. I wanted to talk to you before you left. What's so important about Charlotte Grant? My brother, Lucas, is running against him in the election. I see. This is personal then. Not entirely. Lucas represents the people in the area, the farmers, ranchers, and Native Americans. Grant is aligned with the Sioux Falls businessmen. We're not against business, but we don't believe everyone will get a fair shake if Grant wins. Okay, but I still don't see the connection with his wife. Neither do we. All we know is something doesn't seem right. Our election committee attempted a background check on her and came up empty. His campaign isn't releasing any information about her. This might all be nothing, but we're getting desperate. Betsy thought you might know something. I suppose I shouldn't pursue a career in professional poker if a waitress can read me that easily, I chuckled, leaning back in my chair. She grinned, leaning forward. Ah, there it is. You do have something up your sleeve. Are you going to spill the beans, or do I have to drag it out of you? Finishing my coffee, I couldn't help but find her choice of words amusing. "I think I prefer the second option," I said with a grin, motioning to the now empty cup. I surprised myself with that comment. I wasn't usually one for cheekiness or innuendos, but there was something about her demeanor that I found appealing. She exuded confidence and directness, and I got the sense that she always knew what she wanted and how to get it. As Betsy refilled our cups, Mia Richardson fixed her gaze on me. "Apologies, that was rude of me. I'll gladly answer any questions," I said, feeling a pang of regret for my earlier remark. Mia covered her mouth, laughing lightly. "No worries, Mr. Harrison. I'm not that sensitive, and I actually found your answer quite cute. I shouldn't have phrased my question so bluntly." "Good to know the second option is still on the table," I teased. "No, it's not," she replied firmly. "How do you know Charlotte Grant?" "She's my wife. We've been married for over 20 years, never got divorced. Haven't seen her in a while, but unless she snuck in a divorce I don't know about, we're still hitched." Mia seemed taken aback, speechless for a moment. "What was her maiden name when you married her?" After a moment of hesitation, she replied, "Oh my gosh, her maiden name was Harrison. She didn't even try to hide it." Wow. Betsy hurried over, and suddenly all eyes in the place were on us. I felt a bit embarrassed by the attention, but Mia seemed thrilled. Mia sprang up and planted a kiss right on Betsy's lips. Then she made her way to the foyer and pulled out her cell phone. Betsy blushed a bit and leaned towards me. "What on earth did you say to her? I haven't seen her this excited in 5 years." The smart aleck in me, dormant for so long, started to surface. I glanced up at Betsy and replied, "I told her you and I were getting married." She quickly realized it was a joke and rewarded me with a playful punch on the arm. "Are you going to let me in on the secret?" "Nope, I'll let Mia spill the beans. I'm heading back to my truck to see if I can get some work done." "Nice meeting you, Betsy." The rain had stopped, but I didn't make it back to the truck. Mia grabbed my arm halfway there. "You can't bail yet. You need to talk to Lucas. It won't take long, just a few minutes." I'd rather just forget the whole thing. I regret even mentioning it to Betsy. "How long until Lucas gets here?" "He's meeting us at my place. Do you want to ride with me or follow in your truck?" "I'll follow you." I felt better not relying on someone else for transportation. Mia's Jeep wagon was at least a decade old, if not older. After a couple of miles on asphalt, we turned onto a worn gravel road leading to an equally worn double-wide trailer. Someone was home, judging by the well-lit surroundings. There was no grass, just more gravel, and not much of that. I tried to avoid the mud, but it was tricky. There were no other cars, so I assumed Lucas was still on his way. Just inside the trailer door, there was a designated space for wet coats and boots, a practical touch given the abundance of outerwear already present. The layout was intriguing, resembling more of a classroom than a typical living room. Instead of end tables, there were desks. Instead of table lamps, computers. And there, staring at me, were 3 teenage boys. "Hi guys, this is Michael. He's here to help Uncle Lucas," Mia announced as she headed to the kitchen to make coffee. I gave them a small nod in lieu of a hello, feeling a bit awkward. Scanning the room, I found no sign of a Mr. Richardson. With 2 sons of my own, it was easy to tell these boys were close in age, my guests being 16, 17, and 18. There was no TV or music playing. Instead, all 3 seemed engrossed in either a computer or a book. What struck me as odd was that they didn't seem like typical bookish or nerdy types. Rather, they appeared like normal, active teenagers. "Michael, meet my sons. The oldest is Trent, then Tyler, and the youngest is Travis," Mia introduced. They each smiled and nodded in turn. I couldn't help but grin, my amusement evident. "I know it's a bit peculiar that we gave them all names starting with T. No, that's not what's amusing. It's just that I have 2 sons named Thomas and Tyler." "Quite the coincidence," she chuckled. Tyler, the elder of the 2 boys, spoke first. "Where are your sons?" His mother shot him a stern look, but he brushed it off. "Thomas is at Texas A&M, and Tyler is at Auburn." Her simple answer ignited the room. Suddenly, Trent seemed to come alive, as if energized by the revelation. I'm heading to College Station in August. How long has he been there? What's he studying? Mia reached out to touch his shoulder. Slow down, boy, slow down. I'm sure Mr. Harrison has time to answer all your questions. It turned out Trent had a full football scholarship and was already enrolled in ROTC. Tyler had been accepted to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis and would be leaving in a year. Mia's husband had served in the National Guard and was killed in the Gulf 5 years ago. She didn't delve into further details, and I didn't press for any. Travis, the youngest of the boys, hadn't yet decided his path, but his mother made sure he kept hitting the books regularly. I wasn't sure why Lucas was delayed, but for the next hour, I engaged in conversation with Mia's sons, covering every topic under the sun. Mia stood aside, observing as I connected with them, much like I would with my own boys. Being around Mia's children reminded me of how much I missed mine. Lucas Pierce eventually arrived with 2 associates. After introductions, Mia put her sons back to work while the adults gathered around the kitchen table. There seemed to be some doubt about my claim to be Charlotte's husband, but it wasn't worth arguing about to me. As I rose to depart, I thanked Charlotte for the coffee and bid the boys farewell. Mia wasn't having any of it. "Michael, sit down," Mia commanded, silencing the others at the table. Taking charge of the conversation as if she were running for office, Mia turned to me. "Michael, do you have a marriage license or some proof that you're married to Charlotte Grant?" It took only moments to retrieve a wedding picture from my wallet. Though she was older now with different hair, it was unmistakably Charlotte. I glanced at one of Lucas's associates who had a laptop in front of him. "Go to the Berks County, Pennsylvania Office of Records. You should be able to access marriage licenses from 1960 to 1990. Just search for my name, Michael William Harrison." Mia brought me another cup of coffee with a small smile, seemingly relieved that I hadn't walked away. Flunky number 1 swiveled the laptop screen towards Lucas. August 17th, 1979, correct. Lucas brightened a bit. I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. Good luck finding any divorce record. As far as I know, and anyone else knows, I'm still married. Feel free to investigate as much as you'd like. It doesn't make a difference to me. The conversation was starting to drag, so I stood up without anyone stopping me. "Mind if I catch some Z's in your driveway before I head out?" Not at all. Mia walked me to the door. I glanced back to bid farewell to Lucas and his pals, but they were deeply engrossed in whatever politicians do. They each gave a small wave or nod as I left. An hour later, I heard Lucas and his crew leave. I thought I was set for the night when I heard knocking on the door again. Mia slipped into the cab wearing a flannel nightgown, gesturing for silence. We were far enough away from the house that the guys couldn't hear, but I think she just didn't want any conversation. We spent at least an hour together in the sleeper. It was passionate and loving, but a bit uncomfortable. Rig berths are great for sleeping, but that's about it. I did my best under the circumstances. She left as quietly as she came, no words exchanged. As the sun rose, the door creaked open once more, signaling Travis was up and calling me in for breakfast. Thankfully, guys and I share the same taste in food, and Mia knew exactly how to satisfy our cravings. I spent another hour shooting the breeze with the guys, feeling quite at ease. So much so, I mustered the courage to ask Mia if I could have a warm shower before hitting the road. An hour later, I was finally on my way, or so I thought. Before I could hit the interstate, a local sheriff pulled me over. It seemed Mr. Pierce had more to discuss with me. I followed the police car back to the belly up where Lucas awaited me mid-breakfast. He invited me to join him, and as Betsy brought me coffee, she gave me a knowing wink. She must have been closer to Mia than I realized. It appeared Lucas's legal team wanted me to stick around. When I tried to brush it off with the old adage, time is money, he simply laughed and continued eating. It would have been easy to agree to everything and then just take off, but after last night, I figured I might want to stick around a few more days. The party would cover a motel room and meals, but that was about it. It was a good chance for me to get my clothes washed and catch up on bills and banking. Thank goodness for Wi-Fi. I fired off a couple of emails to the boys and paid all the bills. I was just folding my second load out of the dryer when Mia walked in. I've never seen a woman rock jeans like she did. Despite having 3 kids, her body was still flawless. Her untucked blue Oxford shirt was cinched with a silver Contro belt, giving her a casual yet stylish look. Her skin had a natural glow, not a sheen of sweat, making her undeniably attractive. "What on earth are you doing, Michael?" she asked, catching me off guard. I shrugged innocently, folding laundry. "You were supposed to be gone. Remember, you said you were leaving this morning." "Plans changed. Your brother asked me to stick around a few more days. The only reason I came to see you last night was because I thought you'd be gone today. I can't have you hanging around here after." She stumbled over her words, clearly flustered. It seemed she wasn't expecting anything beyond a one-night stand and was unsure how to handle the situation. I couldn't help but find her frustration amusing. "After talking to Lucas this morning, I'm seriously considering buying a house and staying here permanently." He made it sound pretty enticing. "I know bull when I smell it. What's really going on?" I motioned for Mia to sit down on the bench beside the dryers. "Your brother insisted I stay a few more days, just until they can sort things out with Grant. I promised to keep my distance from you and the boys until everything's settled. I didn't mean to embarrass you or make you uncomfortable." "That's not the issue, Michael. The boys really like you. They were asking when you could come over again. They were a bit disappointed when I told them you were leaving. Tyler even wanted me to ask you to stay a little longer." "I'm sorry, I was just being friendly. They reminded me of my own kids, and it was easy to talk to them. I didn't mean to cause any trouble for you." "Well, I didn't help matters when I went out to your truck last night." "You certainly made things interesting." My playful comment earned me a playful jab in the arm and a smile. "Why did you come out to see me?" Mia shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "I'm not sure. It's been 5 years since my husband passed away. 5 years without any comfort or passion. It just seemed like the perfect opportunity, especially since you were supposed to leave today." She was getting a bit feisty with me again. "So why didn't you leave? Damn it." I handed her a pile of folded laundry and then took the rest before heading back to my motel room. She hesitated at the door for a moment until I put my finger to my lips, mimicking what she had done the night before. Her coy smile turned into a big grin as she closed the door behind her. Making love to a woman in a proper bed is undeniably easier, but what I truly relished was our time in the shower. Not even running out of hot water could dampen our enthusiasm. Before she departed, she insisted I join her for supper at 6. How could I refuse? I was more than ready. Heck, I'd already had 2 showers today. Dinner at Mia's house soon became a regular affair, and Betsy, Mia's longtime friend, became my greatest source of information. Betsy took delight in recounting their escapades from their younger days and the mischief they caused with boys. Conversations about Mia's husband were somber and revealed a deeper side to her, but it only fueled my desire to know her better. Though I never planned to stay in South Dakota, the longer I was there, the more I felt rooted. By the end of the first week, the boys all had Texas and M t-shirts and Auburn sweatshirts. Mia even kept one of the Auburn shirts for Travis. It was a bit too big for him anyway. I paid little attention to the political maneuvering. Lucas and his team seemed to handle things fine without me. However, when the press caught wind of Charlotte's mysterious past and began to exploit it, Grant's team struggled to downplay it. The more they tried to deny or ignore it, the worse it became. Grant's approval ratings plummeted rapidly. I stayed out of it until one morning I received an unexpected visit at the motel. The woman standing at my door was tall, with blonde hair cascading straight down her back. I was still in my boxers, but I welcomed her in nonetheless. Her eyes darted away as I pulled on my jeans, but I couldn't help but observe her every move. She wore a dark suit paired with a crisp white shirt and low black heels, clearly a professional. I wanted to take a quick bathroom break and grab some coffee, but instead, I forced myself to sit at the standard issue motel table. "I'm Sophia Beth Hayes, an attorney from Levitt's Brothers in Sioux Falls. I assume you're Michael William Harrison," she said. She knew my middle name. This wasn't a good sign. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, rising and heading to the bathroom. Though I closed the door, I was pretty sure the noise of my relief was audible. I had intended to hold it in, but I felt like this woman needed a little dose of humility. Less than a minute later, I returned to the table. "Was that necessary?" she asked. "No, but from your tone, I figured we'd be here for a while," I retorted. "Sorry, I was just trying to maintain professionalism." "You missed. What do you want?" I demanded. "Our company represents Oliver Grant. We recently discovered that your marriage to Charlotte Harrison was never properly dissolved, and we're hoping to rectify that," she explained. "How?" I asked. "There are statutes available within the state to allow for rapid terminations of marriages in certain circumstances. We feel that we can take advantage of these statutes with your cooperation," she explained. "You mean you want me to divorce my wife?" I clarified. "Yes," she affirmed. "Why would I want to do that?" I countered. My guest seemed taken aback. At this point, I would welcome the divorce, but on my terms, and I didn't want to reveal that to her. Miss Hayes just sat and looked at me. "Miss Hayes, can you please tell me in plain terms why my wife and I are no longer living together? Don't sugarcoat it and be completely honest. If you can do that, I will consider continuing our conversation." She leaned back and undid the top button of her blouse. "3 years ago, your wife had an affair with a coworker. When you found out about it, she ran away because she could no longer face you or your sons. She has not been in contact with any of you since that time. Is that plain enough for you?" "That's good. In fact, you hit the nail on the head." "So what's the problem?" I asked. "If you've been following the news, you are aware that Charlotte and Mr. Grant got themselves into a little bind. We can't undo what has been done, but we are hoping to alleviate it a little," she explained. "By getting her a quickie divorce," I deduced. "Right. And tell me again, what do I get out of it?" "Freedom." "Hell, I'm happy with the way things are now. You're going to have to show me how my life will be better, not just the same." "What are your desires, Mr. Harrison? Money? How much are we talking about here? Give me something to work with." "What are the terms of the divorce you're suggesting?" "There aren't any. That's why it can be expedited. No money exchanges hands, no assets are divided, no custody disputes. Both of you leave with what you have, owing nothing to each other. It's clean and final." "How long does this process take?" "Less than 90 days. "So it'll be finalized before the election?" "Yes, that's correct," she admitted, downplaying it. "Do I have to see my wife?" "No, in fact, we prefer if you didn't." "Do I have to stay here until it's over?" My guest sighed. "Yes." "Okay, I'll agree, but on one condition. You cover my room and board until it's completed." Suddenly, Sophia Beth Hayes smiled. I could tell this was better than she expected. I could have pushed for more, but right now, getting it for free sounded good. "I can prepare the documents and have them ready for your signature this afternoon. Would that be acceptable?" "Perfect. I'll need to consult with my lawyer, but I don't foresee any issues." I didn't actually have a lawyer, but I wanted to discuss it with Lucas first. "Your lawyer? Give me your card. I'll call you if there's anything he disagrees with. If you don't hear from me, bring me the papers." Relieved that it was sorted, I realized I needed breakfast. I escorted her to the door, barefoot in jeans and no shirt. As she drove off, I spotted Mia across the parking lot. Before I could signal her over, she sped away. After a quick shave, I got dressed and headed to the belly up. Betsy gave me a disapproving look as she poured my coffee. "Do I get a chance to explain?" "Not to me, Mr. Harrison, but you better have a good story for Mia." The food was hot, but the atmosphere was frosty. I finished as quickly as I could and called Lucas. He was out of town, but we chatted for 20 minutes. He found the whole situation hilarious and advised me to proceed cautiously, but to ensure I got copies of everything. He seemed confident, regardless of the outcome. I asked him to call Mia. He was still chuckling when he hung up. There was a large power wash station located near Interstate 90 where I spent a couple of hours getting my rig steam cleaned, vacuumed, and then hand waxed. Although it would have been easier to just pay for the service, I found it therapeutic to do it myself. After finishing up, I grabbed lunch at the Cracker Barrel before heading back, hoping to avoid any anger from Betsy. This time, Betsy was parked right by the door to my room. Mia, looking a bit sheepish, got out of the Jeep as I pulled up, clearly having been called by Lucas. She spent the next 2 hours apologizing to me, a sign that guilt can sometimes be a good thing. When Miss Hayes returned with papers for me to sign, she also insisted I accept a check for $10,000. While Grant's campaign continued to struggle, my divorce petition moved swiftly through the legal system. Trent was now at College Station with a friend looking after him. Just before the election, I was officially divorced. Lucas won and vowed to repay me for my assistance, though I didn't feel like I did much. I jokingly told him I'd consider us even if he gave me his sister, earning myself a punch in the arm from Mia. Charlotte didn't fare as well, as she was eventually charged with bigamy after the election. Before anything could happen, she vanished without a trace, something she was skilled at doing. I never got the chance to see or speak to her again. I decided to sell the truck and purchase a house with a small gravel pit near Huron. Mia and I tied the knot at Christmas, with all 5 of my T-boys in attendance. Betsy moved into the double-wide and promised to take good care of it. As the sonogram revealed we were expecting a girl, I began looking for good girl names that start with the letter T. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.